the recording and transcription. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us here today. My name is Mary Moose, and I am the Associate Dean for the School of Education here at Rasmussen University. And I am pleased to welcome you officially to the ECE webinar series. This is our second one of 2024. So let's jump in and get going so we can hear from Kristen. So a shameless plug because, I have to. So I just want to share with you quickly a little bit about our education programs, and know that you can go to our website at www.rasmussen.edu to get the information. So you don't have to worry about me sharing it with you now. But if you do want more information, we do ask that you go to the website and inquire with one of our chats online, or you can fill out a little online form and then someone will get back to you, typically within 24 hours. They'll try to reach back out to you by email or phone call so that you can get your questions answered in a timely manner. But we do have fully online associate degrees, bachelor completer degrees. So for those people that already have an associate, can come and do the extra 18 months to 2 years to get their bachelor's degree. And then we also have a certificate program, which is just 36 quarter credit hours of early childhood coursework for those people that just need the early childhood classes. So I encourage you to take a peek, see if there's anything that might support your needs, and we hope that maybe you'll join us. If you do have an employer that might have what we call an alliance with us, that's really like a partnership where we work with them to provide a tuition grant for their employees so that you can get some reduced tuition, which is always a good thing. And then we also work with a couple of online training organizations, Pro Solutions Training and Quorum by Teaching Strategies. And both of those organizations, if you join those organizations and take trainings online through them, you can provide your transcript to us when you enroll, showing you've taken classes within the past 3 years with them, and then you can get a tuition grant on your tuition as well. So that's really a nice thing, because anything to reduce your cost, anything to reduce your time to graduation. So we have a pretty generous transfer policy, as well as some course waivers if you have earned a CDA credential, all kinds of good stuff. So I encourage you to take a look if you're interested in continuing your educational journey. Whoops. A couple of quick things. You have been muted, so we will not be able to unmute you. We're only going to unmute our presenter so that we can keep our distractions to a minimum. If your audio goes wonky, you can hear me now, but maybe you can't hear me in 5 minutes. You'll want to make sure to log out and log back in. As long as you use that link, it'll still track you so that you can get your certificate at the end. And any questions or comments go into the chat box, which I'm guessing you already know how to use because you were putting your state of residence in the chat. So that's where you want to put your comments, your questions and such. And I'll help monitor those throughout the session and make sure that Kristen can answer any questions and we can catch anything at the end that we might miss. In-service hour, you do receive 1 in-service hour for attending the session tonight. You do have to attend most of the session, which means at least 50 minutes is typically the rule in order to receive your certificate. You do get your certificate via email, the one you used to sign up for this webinar, 48 hours or 48 business hours after this session. So you should get it by Monday night. Following today. So don't email me tomorrow because you're not going to get it that fast necessarily, although sometimes our team is pretty quick, but we do say within 48 business hours, you should receive it. Now, if you do not receive it, okay, check your email, check your spam, check your junk folder, check your trash folder. I've seen and heard of some emails that are blocking emails, email servers that are blocking emails and sending them immediately to trash. So double check those, please. I can tell you if you are here today using an email with AOL, Yahoo, MSN, and is it Outlook, I think, they typically will block emails. So you'll want to check and make sure that Rasmussen is an okay place to receive emails from. And you might need to make that adjustment in your settings so that you don't miss any emails. The last thing to note is that our certificates do come without names on them. They go directly to you, to the email that you provided us. based on that information. So you would need to add your name to your certificate. We do not have the ability to automatically add your name to it. And you do need to submit your certificate into whatever registry your state uses if you're wanting to count this towards a state registry. Not all states will approve this. Not all states will acknowledge it. So it's up to you, though, to see if your state does acknowledge it and provide whatever documentation that they need. We do not get these webinars approved ahead of time to meet any specific state requirements. So just know that. And it does say that on your certificate, just in case you forget. All right. Without further ado, I want to get to the good stuff, which is hearing from Kristen. Oh my goodness, Kristen, your picture. I'm so sorry, it's blurry. I don't know what happened. It wasn't blurry when I looked at it on the PowerPoint. It must be a translation thing with Teams or something. I apologize, but we're going to hear today, and I even gave you your doctor title early, Kristen. So,
hint, hint, nudge, nudge.
Yes, get on it there. Finish that work. But she is one of our amazing assistant professors who's here at Rasmussen, and she teaches all sorts of courses, and she works with curriculum creation and assessments, and she's just an amazing leader who has some great stuff to share with you today. So I'm going to flip over to her PowerPoint, turn off my camera. You don't need to see my face anymore.
It might be my eyes, but I feel like that picture is not blurry, and I just realized I'm wearing the same shirt, so I look pretty much the same.
That is good.
Yeah.
That is really good. And my mouse is acting funky, so hang on just a second. And it won't act funky anymore. So is it blurry still though? I don't know why your PowerPoint isn't coming up. Hold on just a second. Might have to share my. I just realized I muted myself. I'm sorry. There it goes. Oh my goodness. Okay. There we go.
See it working. There we go.
There we go.
Thank you, Mary. So excited to be part of this collaboration tonight. Take a look. There's like almost 300 of us, right? Professionals in the same space from across the country. Very, very excited. Again, to be here and very thankful of your time, whether you're cooking dinner or you have, like we said, pets and kids running around, you're still here, and very, very grateful for that. As Mary mentioned, my name is Kristen Wally. I'm an assistant professor with the School of Education, Rasmussen Online University. And I've been thinking about Maslow's work a lot. It's a theory was introduced to me decades ago. And since the pandemic, I just kept thinking about these needs, right? And challenging behavior. And is it really challenging, or is the child trying to communicate something else to us? So in this session, we're going to take a look at the session outcomes is exploring children's motivation, right? And why are they using the behaviors they're using in terms of Maslow's hierarchy of human needs. Mary, if you want to go on to the next page, just so I'm literally reading this screen. I won't do this to you again, right? But so we know where we're headed this evening, right? And then we're going to take a look and determine some opportunities to support these learners' needs. How do we structure environments, and how do we use strategies to support a need instead of maybe labeling it as a challenging behavior? Okay, so first, I want you to think, and you're welcome to type in the chat. You can certainly reflect on it or put your ideas into the chat box. What do you think children need? I love it. I see a lot of love, guidance, support, understanding, structure. Attention, security. I like that word, respect. Consistency. Geez, Mary, you can tell we're in a room full of educators, right? Trust.
Totally. I can't keep up with the
I know.
screen going by.
And I'm seeing a lot, right? A lot of similar themes, right? Respect and love and autonomy and food. Absolutely. Patience. We can put a lot of these. So if you still have ideas, you're welcome to continue to type them in the chat box. But we're going to take these needs and you can literally see how they might apply into Maslow's theory. So if we take a look at the pyramid, we can see how some of these, we're seeing some of the exact words, right? Love, safety, respect, shelter, affection, right? And we're going to see how these fit into Maslow's theory. So not a new theory. Um, Around 1943, Maslow had this idea that all humans have basic needs, and he sort of ranked them into a hierarchy, right? Which is why we see the pyramid. However, Maslow never created the pyramid, right? This came after, and to be quite honest, I'm not even sure where the actual pyramid came from, but it's sort of mainstream today, so we're going to use it. What he did give us was this idea of these different needs, and perhaps some take more of our time and attention and resources to sort of satisfy. So early in his work, he believed that the lower need, those physiological needs, the safety needs, the ones that would be on the base of the pyramid, are going to take the greatest priority, right? They're going to need to be addressed first before humans can sort of move up the ladder. Later in his theory, a couple important things to note as how his theory sort of evolved. We want to think of the pyramid not as a ladder that we climb up, right? So we're not going to climb up and sit in this self-actualization and just remain there for life. Unfortunately, or fortunately, it's sort of a two-way street. So we can move up and down this pyramid at any given time throughout the week, even from moment to moment, we might find ourselves with different needs. We can also have two needs at the same time. So for example, maybe the child is hungry, right? But they also need that love and support from that trusted caregiver. I think what the pyramid does for us is it can help us, I don't want to say rank, but it can sort of help us identify which need might take a priority, right? It gives us some direction in our strategies to support children. Or it says, hey, two things are happening. Maybe we want to couple some strategies so that we can work towards both of those goals or needs at the same time. Okay. Now, again, it's important to remember for all of you theory gurus, it's a generalization to say the lowest need is going to take the highest priority, right? This isn't going to be true for everybody, but it does give us a good start in our outlook on ECE. Okay, so now that we have some theory under our belts, let's take a look at the rest of each need in detail. Before we start, I want you to now think about a specific child. Now, you do not have to type this into the chat. And if you do, please make sure you're using a made up name, right? No real names here. But I want you to reflect for 30 seconds. Think of a child in your program or in your community or in your own home. What is that child's name and what do they need? Here's your call to action for tonight. As we move through this presentation, I'm hopeful that you're going to recall this child and you're going to see where they are within these level of needs, and you're going to see some strategies, right, to be able to support that child. So when you see that child tomorrow or tonight or the next interaction, you have a good foundation to understand what that child is communicating based on his or her needs, and you'll have some strategies to support that. All right, so now that we know where we're headed, let's take a look at the base of this pyramid. So our physiological needs, food, water, shelter, air, right? These are our survival needs. We are designed as humans to work really hard to make sure, right, that we're meeting these needs. They're going to take a lot of resources, time, and attention if we do not have those things. Okay, what might this look like in a ECE program? I want to introduce you to Timothy. So Timothy is a fantastic, terrific toddler. He lives with his father and he attends a wonderful ECE program. So Timothy's father works late and he really values that time with his son. So oftentimes he'll come home late from work and the two will stay up reading books or singing songs or snuggling watching their favorite show. They sleep in the morning because of those late night encounters. And when that buzzer goes off for the alarm in the morning, they sort of rush to get out of the house to get Timothy to his program, and the father goes back to work. Timothy attends a fantastic childcare program. They do have a policy program that states that all children must be there before 8 a.m. to receive a breakfast meal and before 9:15 to receive snack. Timothy and his father typically come in at 8:45 or 10 o'clock on the dot almost every day. Timothy's educators enjoy him, but they state that mornings are a little difficult. It's harder to get Timothy engaged in an activity. He sort of walks from center to center, picking at the material, but not really engaging in anything. He often sits by the table and uses the words hungry or asks for lunch. When we think about Maslow and his pyramid, what might Timothy, what need might Timothy have that's not being met? Oh, that's okay. You can go on to the next
Sorry, I
one,
pushed the
Mary.
button too
No, totally
fast.
fine. You can go on. Yeah, maybe he's hungry, right? Timothy's saying, I missed breakfast, right? I had to rush out. I missed snack, and now I'm gonna have to wait till 12 or whenever lunch comes, right? And he's hungry. So we're gonna use the term supporting needs. So at this point, can we offer him some food? Probably, and we're gonna talk about that. We can't always meet a child's need, right? So we know some children come to us with maybe limited access to nutritious foods or unstable housing. We can't go get them a house as much as we would love to, but we can, right, connect community resources and share and really think about our program policies and our practices to help support some of these needs. Yeah, I like all of this coming into the chat. They're hungry. He's hungry. What thing we can think about, right, is our program policies. So there is a legit need to have program policies. And there's certainly a need to have even how we serve our meal policies. But I wonder if we can also take a look at these policies through the lens of all of our children and families to make sure it's meeting all of their needs. So, for example, in some programs, I see that a small meal is set aside, right? We know Timothy's coming in at 9:45. We know he's going to be hungry. Right. And we can continue down the same path where he's not really engaged and he's feeling hungry, or we can try to support that need by saving a little bit of food. Right. We want to make sure our schedules are consistent, as I saw in the chat, but also flexible enough to meet individual needs. Another example I can share, I often see in those of us that work with infants and toddlers. So I've seen this both ways. Some programs lunchtime, mealtime rolls around, right? And those toddlers or those old mobile infants, right, are sitting at the table and their heads sort of nodding and their eyes are closing, right? And what is their behavior telling us? They're tired, right? Some programs, I see the educators sing and dance and try everything to get these children to stay awake with good intentions. We want them to eat nutritious meals, right? But at some point, I've also seen again, a saved portion of a meal, the infant is put to sleep, and when they wake up, they're allowed or they have another meal coming to serve those needs. Right, so we have program policies for all, and then we want to make sure we're accommodating them to the best of our abilities um, within those guidelines. All right, so let's take a look at the next level in the pyramid. Let's say we're coming to school or we're coming to our programs, we're fed and we have our physiological needs met. Now the children, yeah, I like all these comments in the chat box. Lots of different ways that we can support those needs. Now the children or adults or humans can start to attend to their safety needs. So when we think about safety needs, we're thinking about being safe and secure in our environment, in our surroundings, in our program, in our family. It's also about our health, right? It could be as adults having secure employment or secure access to various resources. This plays out in our programs quite often. Next slide, Mary. Right? Think about, right, the state of the world over the past several years, right? Children are getting sick, families are getting sick. I know we had a bout of pneumonia in my house, right? And didn't know it. And then it caused a lot of stress. We don't want to give it to the little ones. We don't want to give it to the older ones, right? Lots of stuff going on, lots of time and attention sort of being drawn away to look at that. Think about those transitions, Mary. We lost the slides. If I'll keep chatting about it, but just
I
let me know
got
we
kicked out,
lost.
so
Oh
that's why.
no.
So hang on. I'm getting it back.
Well, welcome back.
Isn't that fun? Okay.
Yeah. When I think of safety needs, I also think about those transitions, right? Transitions not only for the child, but certainly for the adult as well, right? They're investing in you to take care of their little one, right? And that toddler, that infant, or even the older child, right, is having to separate from that preferred caregiver and come into an environment. This is especially true for newbies in our program, right? Little ones or any of them that are going through any particular transition. This level also focuses on what children see in their community, what they hear or see around them or in the news, right? I know I'm in Illinois. We rarely report on the good things that are happening, right? And when it's on in the background, I hear sort of the intensity of the broadcaster's voice, right? And all these different flashes and images on the screen. And even if a child's playing in the background, that can sort of, continuously click in their brain that something might not be right. And so it can be scary. So how do we support needs for safety? Mary, are you back with us? You're going to see on here in the middle, positive relationships, right? And that's going to be on every slide. It really does start with you. It does start with that trust. Right? And I think that Mary even makes me think of an entirely different webinar, right? But the power of you, I think I don't want to lose, right? As we go through some of these
Love
other,
it.
these other strategies. Right. So we just talked about having a flexible routine, and that's true. It needs to be flexible enough to meet the individual child's needs. However, it also has to be predictable. Right. Once we can anticipate what's going to happen, we have this sense of security, maybe a sense of calmness. This is true for young children as well. Right. So think about schedules in our room. For very young infants, we verbally state what's going to happen or what we're doing. Right. And soothing tones and eye contact if it's appropriate for the child. And we can do this through any age group. Even young or older infants and toddlers can start to use those picture schedules. So I was in a program a while back and they had this wonderful picture schedule aimed for the children, right? So they knew. Young children don't know, in the afternoon, mom will be back. Oh, this slide is on here. Sorry, Mary, I didn't think I finished it. Right, but look down here. So there's a little bus, and this group had put all the children's pictures on the bus, right? And the bus moves along the line, and this house, right, was actually replaced with some of the individual children had their preferred caregiver's face, right? So they don't know what the afternoon means or what 5 minutes mean, but they can see this bus chugging along. Hey, this bus is getting closer to dad or grandma or whoever it is, right? And so picture schedules for young children are super important as well. And the yellow, a Google image, sorry, Google, right? But whenever you can have that child's picture, again, a way of representation that we'll talk about in the next category of need, right? But those picture schedules, whenever we can have the word, but also the children engaged in the pictures so that they can see what's going to happen next. Especially powerful, right? When we have that indicator. So it's easy to get lost in a sea of a to-do list, right? Or scheduling. So we can take down the pictures once it's been completed, or we can put a little arrow to indicate to the older children where they are now and where they're going to head. Mary, will you flip back to the strategy slide? And the other thing I think about is the less popular, right, comfort items from home. I wanted you to think about this. Let's imagine that you show up at work tomorrow or wherever you're headed, right? And you search through your pockets or your bag or your coat and you realize your phone was left on the counter. How do you feel? What are some emotions or feelings that might instantly come to you? Yeah, Mary, I started even thinking about it. I feel it in my shoulders, right? Start to get a little tense, stressed, panic. Yeah, for some of us, that anxiety might feel a little worse. Yeah, for some of us, it's a comfort item, right? And if it's not a phone, insert any, right, whatever thing of value that you tend to keep on you or in your brain or whatever whatever it is, right? But we can connect to people, we can reach out if we need something, they can contact us. So we might feel all of these things. Same is true for young children, right? And so oftentimes there's a no toy from home policy with good intention. Again, things can get lost, they can get broken, they could share germs, lots of reasons, right? But what if we rethink it, right? And maybe we put some realistic boundaries or expectations around it, right? And have that comfort item where that child can go to when he or she is feeling unsure, right? Or needs a little bit of that safety. Okay, so let's assume the child is right, their needs have been met, they're feeling good in your program, it's a safe place to be, right? The next step on the pyramid is love and belonging. Lots of these comments came into the chat right away, right? Children need to feel love, they need to feel belong, they need to feel respected. Yeah, I'm glad you survived, Mary. We will survive for sure. Now children, they and all adults, right? It's not just children. Oh, sorry. It's about being part of a family, right? Being part of your program, being in a friendship, being included, right? And so what does this look like in our programs? I want you to think about the child who you named at the beginning of this session, and then think about how they are included in your program or in your community or in your home. How are they represented? When you take a look in your program tomorrow, if you are in one, right? Your community, if you're out and about. Think about how you're represented. All children need to have that representation. Mary, do you want to move it down a couple slides so we can look at some ways to support? Yeah, I like this. Hugs and high fives. Yep. How do we welcome people into our space, right? That however they prefer to be welcomed, hopefully. Maybe it's that hug, high five strategy. Right, but recognizing them, welcoming them in. I'm glad you're here today. And that includes whoever brought them in that day as well. Recommend welcoming them in as well. We can look around our programs, right? And think about how children are represented. Are there pictures on their wall? Are there artwork on their wall? Right? How are they represented in the activity choices and the materials? I think a lot about the Dramatic Play Center, right? There's a wonderfully diverse group that can contribute, right, to your program. So maybe you ask families to share empty food boxes. So when you have a restaurant or you have a grocery store theme, that multiple cultures and real items that children see in their households are represented. Oh, Holly, I like that. I'm so glad you're here today. Yep. What does that say? You belong here. You belong here for sure. And so representation can happen everywhere in our programs, right? Starting with that walk in the door. Again, positive relationships we see, The power of you is incredibly powerful. I think a lot about of the banking time method. So the team out of the University of Virginia, right, gave us this idea of banking time where the short version, right, is spending 5 minutes a day with a child in a very authentic way, 5 minutes a day, every day for some consecutive days, right? So think about the child that you may feel most challenged by their behavior, right? And so, for example, you go to the block area with this child, right? Assuming that you're in ratio, right? And you spend 5 minutes. And this is not the time to count how many blocks tall your tower was or talk about the shapes. Instead, it's really about that child led, child directed activity. And you're taking that child's lead. And for the, absolutely, Dorian, and for that 5 minutes, what are you saying? Right? You belong here. This is so exciting. I want to spend this time with you. Right. And so when you start to make these connections and these positive connections, you start to see absolutely you're important. You'll start to see some of those behaviors change, right? Because they feel loved, they feel like they belong. All right, we're almost towards the top of the pyramid. Let's take a look at esteem needs. This is probably one of my favorites. Right. So now children are free to develop confidence and self esteem. They're figuring out who they are. Right. How exciting for any human, especially those in our ECE programs. So, what does this look like in our programs? Let me introduce you to Jaden. So, Jaden is a new 3-year-old, or a 3-year-old with newly developing gross motor skills. Right. So, he climbs the top of this tall structure and he's so excited and he's yelling, "Teacher, look at me, look at me." Right. And the teacher calls out, good job, but continues on. And Jane gets higher and higher. And the teacher notices, and the teacher's tone changes a little, right? And calls out, "Jaden, don't forget to be careful." Right? "Jaden, 2 hands. Jaden, do you think you're high enough?" Right? And Jaden saying, "Teacher, I can do this. I can do this." And he takes his hand off to wave at the teacher. And now the teacher rushes over, "Jaden, 2 hands." Right? And Jaden jumps down and he's frustrated and he kicks at the mulch. Right. And what happened? We walked ourselves into a power struggle, right? That child saying, "Hey, I can do this," or "I'm sure going to try." And sometimes it's the educator's own need that dictates how we respond or how we interact with that child. Mary, will you go on to the next slide? Do we want that child to be safe? Absolutely. It's first and foremost, right? However, this situation makes me think of that educator's own need, right? And probably my own. Get a little queasy when I see children climbing high, and I have to check in with myself before words come out of my mouth, right? So priorities, safety is a priority, right? But we're going to assume that we've sort of taught and had some conversations and practiced about how to climb, right? And we have that mulch, so we have a safe spot and we have eyes and a caring educator nearby, right? So the expectation is realistic. And now we need to think about, is it my need or is it, right, the child's need? Children are always struggling for that autonomy, right? That respect that I saw so many times in the chat. They want to do it themselves. And they're figuring out what they can do and what they can do with support. And so oftentimes the behavior we're seeing, right, the non-compliance, right, or the kicking at the mulch is this idea of, "Hey, teacher, I can do this, but I can't yet do it by myself, or I can't do it within the expectations that are put on me right now." Right? So lots of different ways this idea, this scenario makes me think of Rusty Keeler's Finding Your Yes, right? So yes, the educator could call out that they're too high or make them get down, right? Or they could move closer, right? Or they may be a child that has less mobile. Maybe they do hand over hand help them, or they see Jane's confident and they can do it. And then they do offer that intentional praise. I like all of that intentional praise I'm seeing as I scroll through the chat, right? Not just a, "Hey, good job" from across the playground, but that real intentional, "I see you," right? I see you. And I know you can do it too. Maybe let's do it together if that's what we need. When we support esteem needs, we also need to think about realistic expectations, right? I think about that circle time, morning meeting, things of that nature, right? Where maybe a child's just not ready to sit down at that moment. Or maybe you're reading, a book and then a child has something to say about his dog. And now the whole conversation is about everybody else's dog, right? And the educator might be feeling a little frustrated because that wasn't on the lesson plan. And so there's this constant sort of back and forth of balancing the educator's need, right, with that need of individuality and the growing confidence and the self-esteem, right? And those children figuring it out. Yeah, let the children take the lead. Absolutely. And sometimes we have to lead or guide, right? But sometimes it's figuring out when and where and which battles, which power struggles we want to get into. All right, let's put the cap on this pyramid. Sitting at the top is self-actualization. So, since the last time we hosted this session, I was reading some research that suggested that to be at the top of the pyramid, right, to have self-actualization, you have to be aware, right? Aware that you're sort of reaching your fullest potential. Let me back up. Self-actualization is really reaching your fullest potential, being free to be who you are, right? This type of thing. And some of the literature says, well, children don't yet have that capacity, right? That cognitive capacity. And I don't know, the jury's out, right? But I think I might tend to disagree. I think I see children in self-actualization quite often, right? When they're really engaged in free play, right? When they're learning in joyful ways, when they keep trying something over and over and over, and then you see that light bulb click and they get it, right? The look on their face. I see it when they're running across the playground. I see it all the time. And I think, right, our goal then with this whole pyramid is to use all of these supports, right? Identify where the children are, what they're communicating to us based on their need, right? Using all of these different supports for these different levels of needs so that children can sit on the top of the pyramid for as many minutes as possible throughout the day, right? They're not going to stay there all day. We're going to have to do some other work. But when they get there, I think we know it, right? We see it and we recognize it. And that's what ECE is all like. That's exciting stuff to me. And so I
Can I
do
add
think,
something, Kristen?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I would think too that it's seeing the kids be themselves,
Mhm.
right? When they can be authentically themselves and have that time and space to do that. That's when I think they're seeing themselves at that space and time, if that makes sense. Like, self-actualization, I think is you in that space in that moment, kind of fulfilling your destiny. And that's really what the kids are doing when they're engaged in free play and they're having the time and the space to be able to do what they do and be who they are and interact with the friends in the way that they want to and just, really being themselves.
Agreed. And it's awesome to watch, right?
Hmm.
Like that's why we're here. It's so exciting to see them be who they want to be. And I think all of this work then, right? Like that's why, because we want them to stay there as long as possible. Yeah,
Yes.
definitely. Um, so the next slide sort of just wraps up some of the things that we've been talking about, right? But we're going to have to mix these proactive and reactive strategies, right? How do we arrange the environment? What are our expectations of the children? And are they really realistic based on development, right? And then when we do see this need being met, that's the reactive. What do we do? Do we save a portion of their food, right? Do we redirect them? What is it that we want to use to support that, right? I think if we're using this to constantly seek to understand, so sometimes challenging behavior is challenging to us, right? Like it is challenging. It challenges how we do things. It's challenging mentally and emotionally, right? I think when we put it into the perspective of a need, like, hey, what is this behavior? Instead of labeling it as challenging, what is this? What is let me dig a little deeper here. Let me get curious about this. Yeah, it's challenging for the child too, right? And so understanding, like just being for a moment and really trying to figure out what that need might, right? What that behavior might be telling you about where what that child needs. Okay. All right. Before we wrap up with questions, I want to put this theory back into the bigger picture. So we talked about it tonight, right, in terms of children, but it's the hierarchy of human needs theory. And you are human too, as am I, right? And so I'm hopeful that you're able to look at this through your own lens as well, right? What do you need as an educator? Right? Where is your unmet need, right? Sometimes you don't feel good, you don't feel good, right? But sometimes we can check in here to figure out what we need to advocate for those supports or help support ourselves as well. Thank you again. Thank you so much for taking your time to collaborate tonight. Very excited to be a part of this. And there is time for questions. Mary, I don't think I missed any in the chat. A lot of comments to read through, but
A lot of comments, like so many. I was having a really hard time. I was trying to, emoji some of them and stuff, and my mouse couldn't keep up with the comments. They'd fly by as I was trying to acknowledge
mhm.
them. But I don't think I saw a lot of questions, just a lot of really great sharing. But I have a question for you. Can I ask you one?
Sure.
So if you're working with kind of maybe you kind of answered it already, but where do you start when, thinking of probably the most common question and topic that we get here is working with children that are exhibiting challenging behaviors. And these are, you know, everyday children that are just really having challenges socially in the classroom, emotionally in the classroom. Do you have any suggestions on where to start?
Will you pull the one of the pyramid slides?
Will this one work?
Yeah. So this is sort of an open-ended answer, but I hope it sort of drives home. I think the place to start is first gathering information, right? And sort of switching our perspective. Um, like we said, it is challenging and it's challenging for everybody, including that child, right?
Mhm.
But when I think about the challenging behavior, in a way, sometimes my guard is already up, right? Like in a
Mhm.
way, I want the children to succeed, but yet this, whatever behavior I'm still not seeing,
Mhm.
I can put that to the side and I can look at it as a need, right? Which is very different. That removes all of the blame from anybody, right? So the program, the parents, the family, the child, whatever's happening, what is he trying or she trying to communicate to me? That's the place to start. That curiosity of like just really seeking to understand the child, right? The more we understand about the child, the AP, the better able we are going to be able to partner with them, if that makes sense. Once I can identify the need or the needs, then I also use this pyramid, right? Like if the child's hungry, let's feed them if it's a right appropriate in that context, right? If they need a hug because they need to be safe, let's right. So I'm going to take that lowest need first with the understanding that I'm probably going to have to operate in multiple levels at the same time as well.
Yeah, and that's hard to sometimes negotiate as an educator.
Mhm.
When you're in the heat of the moment and you're having to try to think of, well, it's not just food he needs. You know what I mean? It could be three other things,
Yep.
and that's sometimes hard because we're usually time bound and busy and stressed and having to interact with all the other children. And I know that comes up often, is, spending extra time with one child to help them with their needs. Does that or is that fair to the other 19 children in the preschool room or however many kids are in your group size? Um, but yet it's still ultimately, we're still here for the individual children. There is another question.
Yep.
So the question is from Elle. She says, what if you have a child with severe behavior issues and you've tried everything? So your director put in a classroom with younger children. So now he's 3 in a classroom with 1 and 2-year-olds.
So I'm going to be very careful to not step in anybody's own program, right? Because I don't have the context. Again, I would encourage your team to look at what the behavior might be communicating, right? What is that need? What is the skill maybe that's not yet developed in the way that it should be? Right? Or is there some emotional feelings there, some safety like that? It typically makes me think of safety. I think a lot of times when children get scared, right, or they have this anxiety, it comes out in behavior that
Mm-hmm.
might be challenging to us. So that's usually the level where I always want to operate out of.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think in cases of severe, right, there could be
Yeah.
some that need for community services, right, intervention and some additional support
Mm-hmm.
as well that might not only be able to be tackled by that team.
Yeah. And that's what I was thinking too. Um, okay, so let's see here. I don't want to skip anybody, but I'm worried I'm going to miss something. Um,
I did see a question, Mary. Do you
yeah.
we can't email the slides, correct?
We can't email the slides, but we can, if you're okay with it, Kristen, I can put them into a PDF and we can include them with the certificate email
Okay, sure.
that goes out. It'll come inside, so you all know. So I'm going to repeat it now before we get to the point where we're all headed out for the night. So I'll repeat it now. We will send out a certificate within 48 business hours of this webinar ending. That certificate will include inside the email a link to your certificate. And then it will also include a link to a PDF with the PowerPoint presentation. And then usually there's information on the next webinar that's coming out too, so you can then sign up for the next one that will be in March. So keep your eyes open for that email, but like I said, 48 business hours, so by Monday night you should receive it. And then double check, triple check, quadruple check all those extra folders that email systems can sometimes send emails that they think might be spam or they think might be an erroneous email. Usually you can make sure that your email server will accept emails from certain locations. So you might want to go in and make sure that Rasmussen University or Rasmussen is one of those emails or organizations your email will accept. So let's see. What's
I
another
see one
question?
about a child being separated from his mom.
Oh,
Again, there's no one quick one size fits all strategy, unfortunately, right? Wouldn't that make
mhm.
our job so much easier?
Wouldn't that be lovely?
Yes, but we know these little ones are unique and wonderful. But my brain immediately goes to safety, right? That's a big change at home. And so big changes are going to cause insecurity and unsafe feelings, right? So making sure your room is a safe space and how you're interacting with that child is very consistent. I
Mhm.
also think about love and belonging, right? That
Yes.
thing from home, maybe that special thing. I don't know if mom, has the ability to um, have something tangible, right? Or maybe it's a picture, or maybe you're talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I don't have the context here, right? But I feel like
Mm-hmm.
those two needs is probably where that child is operating.
Yeah, I used to work in a program with toddlers up to 2.5, and one of the children's mom traveled for work a lot and was probably home maybe 2 days a week, if that. And the child lived with grandma, and then the dad was there and an older sibling. And what they did with this little one is because he missed her so much, is that at first he would sleep with one of her scarves. So it smelled like her. It had her perfume or her body wash or whatever it was that smelled like his mom. And he'd sleep with that scarf all the time. We were consistently washing it, but we didn't wash it. We sent it home to be washed because they wanted it to smell like mom. And so they did that. And then eventually mom got him a stuffed bear. And it was a not a very big one, just a small stuffed bear. And they did the same thing so that this was a bear that he could hold on to that and he could sleep with because he was a toddler and he could carry around with him when he was missing her. It especially was helpful, towards the end of her travel time period. But he could put it in his cubby and when he didn't need it, but when he needed that extra dose of mom, then he was able to get that. That was really felt helpful. A lot easier than carrying around a scarf on the playground, but he would do that too. um, Someone did put in, which I thought was really a good question, is what if the child tells you the need, but it's one that needs to be met at home?
I think that's the toughest part about being an educator, right? I guess
Mhm.
it depends on the need. um, we can't mandate what happens at home. We only have so much influence while in the program. Community resources, right? positive relationships, Mary, this has to be a new webinar, right? Like,
It
how
does.
are we partnering with that family, right? Which is a whole nother topic, right?
Yes.
And then offer, like we build that relationship with the family, which takes time, and then we can offer these resources that might be received in a better way because we have a positive relationship, right? So n- unfortunately, it's not a quick fix,
Mhm.
right? It's a lot of these relationship building techniques. Sometimes we can send the resource home if it's appropriate
Mhm.
and available to us. Sometimes we can connect with the community or have the community come into us, right, to be available. So
Mhm.
again, very dependent on individual situations.
Yeah. And there's a lot of questions, what do you do about a child who's running all the time in the classroom, and what to do about a 1.5-year-old child who's hitting and biting, others in the classroom. And, I wish we could give you all the this is how you do it answer to all of these questions. But I think it's, what Kristen has said, it's going back and looking at what are they trying to tell you. And, the easy one that I can think of is I remember I'll give another example in a toddler room that I didn't work in as a teacher, but I was a director for, and they had 1 to 2-year-old children, and the tables were all at the toddler level. So they were all really low. Chairs were really low, and the children were climbing consistently on top of the tables all the time. And we wanted them out. We wanted them available to use with puzzles, and we wanted them available to use for other toys and things like that, for the children to play on when they weren't being used for meals. And we didn't want to put them away because we wanted to teach children how to do things at the table. But they kept climbing on the tables, and the teacher was constantly taking the children down. It was becoming a game. They thought it was fun. And then she stopped and she said, "Wait a second. Why am I doing this?" And she first thought the first thing was, why are the children constantly climbing on the tables? And it was because the children needed more climbing. They needed more large motor play. They needed more big body play. And so what she did then was she went and grabbed one of those wooden rocking boats that have the steps on one side, and you flip it over and it's a rocking boat. And they practiced going up and down the steps on that one, and they would turn it over and then rock with it. She found balls and brought balls into the classroom so that they could throw balls, and they turned on music more often than not and did sing-along songs and music and dancing music so that the kids could jump up and down and move their bodies. They went outside more often so that the toddlers could run around and they could get, their willies out or whatever you want to think of, right? Because they needed to have that big body play. And anything that she could think of that got the kids to moving their bodies in large motion was very helpful. And she cut down a lot on children climbing on tables because they had other things to do. And it was things that their bodies were telling them they needed to do, which was move in a big way. So, try to think back to what are they trying to tell you? And it's going to come down to one of these things in most likelihood, um, as a base need for the children.
Mary, your example was awesome, especially from the educator's point of view,
Yeah. I
right?
still can
Sometimes,
picture them dancing on the tables. They were cute as heck, but
yeah.
they're up there and they're dancing and they're smiling and you're like, oh, no.
And sometimes we see the behavior, right? We know it, but think about how big of a change that is. That's like redoing lesson plans. That's throwing your plan out. That's right. So
Yes.
then we have to think about our need and like, okay,
Yes.
is it about what I need or is it about what these kids need? And that's a great example of rethinking how things are done to make sure we're meeting those needs.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Absolutely. Gosh, there's some amazing questions on here. Um, there's another one about snack. Let's see. I know I just had a long conversation with some colleagues at a conference this past weekend about snack time, and concerned that kids, weren't eating their snack, or snack time was taking up a huge portion of the day and all this kind of stuff, and talking about how we could rethink, how children eat snack, right? So that children don't sit down for snack, eat, and I'm using air quotes, eat or just sit there, and then a half hour later they're hungry, right? Because they didn't eat their snack at snack time. They weren't hungry then, they're hungry now. Those kinds of types of behaviors, and rethinking about how you deliver snack. Does it have to be all together as a group of however many kids, Or can snack be another interest area in your playtime where they can come and go when they're hungry, if they're hungry. And if they're not hungry, they don't eat. If, that's up to them. It's open to them. It's reminded of them. But it's an option for them, and they can socialize and sit there for a longer period of time if they'd like, or they can eat quickly and move on to whatever they wanted to do. So that was kind of an interesting conversation too, and thinking about the psychological needs or physiological needs of the children. Some kids just want to drink. Some kids don't want snack. Some kids don't want any snack. Some kids want 3 snacks. I guess it depends, but that was
Mary, to your
interesting.
point, I saw a comment in the chat about staying on their cots, right? So again,
Yes.
there's no one right strategy, right? But maybe it's an opportunity to think about the expectation, right? Is the expectation for the child to stay on the cot for an hour or however long realistic for that specific child? And can they have something to do, right? So maybe it's sitting quietly at a table with a table toy, or maybe it's a book on the cot, instead of just the expectation that all children are napping. Right, just really
Mhm.
rethinking about children's needs, right? What are they telling us, and
Yeah.
is it fitting into what we thought they needed?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I like the idea too of the calm bodies. You use toddler yoga for nap time. I'm like, what a great idea. What a great transition into nap time is to do yoga and yoga breathing and relaxation. Because think about it. They come out of snack or lunch and then they go to nap time, right? They go in, and typical transition would be clean up from lunch, go to the bathroom, diaper changes, what have you. Maybe a short rest time or reading time on the cot or on a carpet with books, and then you're suddenly laying down. Some kids go outside right after lunch and then come in and have to lay right down. I'm like, how does that transition work? But helping to
Swinging on the
relax their
swings now,
bodies.
go lay down and go to sleep.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just ran around
Yeah.
the park, you ran around the playground for 20 minutes. Now go lay down. Um, yeah, I think sometimes it's just rethinking what traditionally we often do or how we often react. Going back to the basics of something like this is really helpful to understanding how children behave. Love it. Well, awesome. Well, it is just about 8:30, so I want to make sure that we send you all off on your wonderful evening. Thank you so much, Kristen, for presenting on this and getting us thinking about this. I don't think we bring ourselves back to the necessities, the needs of the child often enough, especially when we have challenges. We get caught up in the challenge and we kind of have to sit down and bring ourselves back to these basics that really truly tell us what our children need from us. So thank you so, so much for being here. And you're going to write that next one, right?
Yeah. I'll work on that.
Summer.
It
We've
comes
got
up
we've got the
every
next
time,
few
right? You
months
can't
planned.
talk
We're
about
good.
anything without talking about relationships. So I guess it's going to happen.
It is. It is the critical thing for working with children and their families. So big proponent. Thank you very much, you guys.
Yeah.
Have a
Thanks,
great
team.
evening,
Have a good night.
everyone.